Welcome to all of you to this first seminar after the summer break, organized by the PRIO Gender team or the PRIO Gender Research Group. My name is Torunn Tryggestad, and I'm a senior researcher here at PRIO and also a project leader. We have, for many years, worked on gender issues here at PRIO, mainly related to peace and security, conflict countries, post-conflict countries, peace building. But in my own work, for instance, I've seen that women can really make a difference. And I saw it very well during Hillary Clinton's period as Secretary of State of the US. Then we could really see how much more emphasis she was putting on women's issues, women's rights in her foreign policy. So that is one of the main reasons for why I have invited Hilde, Eliassen and Restad here today, because I'm curious to hear more about Hillary Clinton, her presidential candidacy, what kind of woman she is, the gender dynamics in American politics, and maybe if Hilde dares to share some reflections of what kind of president she might become in terms of gender issues. I'm really looking forward to this. Hilde is an associate professor at Bjørknes College. Bjørknes College and PRIO, we have had a collaboration quite closely for many years on various MA courses and bachelor courses in peace and conflict studies. I think it's maybe not the first time, but Hilde is one of the few from Bjørknes that has come here to PRIO to give talks. So we think this is a very nice opportunity to introduce more of the people working at Bjørknes. Hilde she holds a PhD from the University of Virginia. She has worked for a couple of years at the Norwegian Institute of International Affairs, NUPI, here in Oslo. And now she is then at Bjørknes. She is an expert on American politics. This year, this spring, I think it was, this book came out, entitled American Exceptionalism, an idea that made a nation and remade the world, no less. This is not about Hillary Clinton, but if you would like to say a few words about your book, you're welcome to do so. Buy the book. Yes. So I think I'll just leave the floor to you. Hilde will talk for about maybe 45 minutes so that we have ample time for questions and discussions. And feel free to ask questions. We really like lively discussions. And also, if you like, just help yourself with fruit and coffee in between. Okay, Hilde, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Torunn. Let's see. Am I good? Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me. I was really surprised because I don't do research on gender. And there are some very prominent people in the audience that do research on gender, so I'm really nervous. But what I do is mostly I do research on US foreign policy and the domestic variables or factors that contribute to US foreign policy. And then I have sort of a passion, as my husband will tell you, for following elections and particularly female candidates in the US. So I am sort of an electoral politics kind of gal. But I thought maybe we should start by asking or really questioning the premise of the seminar, because do we really need a seminar on gender and American elections? Maybe there's no problem at all. I'm glad you asked, Hilde. I thought what we would do, just to set the stage a little bit, is to watch this video that I have that's a compilation of various kinds of media coverage of the 2008 election cycle. As you all remember, that is when Hillary Clinton ran for president the first time against, I don't know if you've heard of him, Barack Obama. She lost, and it was an extremely interesting electoral cycle for those who care about gender dynamics and female presidential candidates or female political candidates in general. This compilation mostly focuses on Hillary Clinton because it is made by a progressive media center, just to have that out in the open. There was also another woman who ran for national office in 2008, and her name was Sarah Palin, and she figures a little bit in this presentation, but mostly because Torunn asked me to talk about Hillary Clinton, that's what I'm going to do. So let's see here if the media gods are with me. How do I get the pointer? Oh my God, it's so fancy. You're gonna have to come help me. This is not good for gender dynamics.
Not gender, it's age.
Oh yeah, the other way. Thank you. Thank you very much.
A hoe is a hoe, right?
The music is dramatic. Ignore it.
Could you get a little closer to the camera?
What is it? Is it
Come
zooming
in closer.
strangely?
No, come in further. Come in closer. Really close.
What do you do?
I'm just kidding. You look great. Anyway, thanks. Aaron, it's great to look at that look. You're great.
I don't even know. I'm going to have to go look at the tape here. I'm
no,
in a
you're
strange
beautiful.
location.
Thank you. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. You're a knockout. Anyway, thank you, Aaron Burnett. I get in trouble for this, but you're great looking, obviously. You're one of the God's gifts to men in this country. She was calm. She was charming. Her hair looked, just to be cosmetic, her hair looked great. She looked great. What's she wearing tonight? The cosmetics tonight are very important. Whatever you say about Obama, his wife looked perfect.
We've seen stories about her showing a little bit of cleavage on the floor of the U.S. Senate.
And I believe we actually have a split screen of the two women, and you can see there is a big difference between what Jackie Smith was wearing, although it's being covered by our... There we go.
So when you look at the calculation that goes into everything that Hillary Clinton does, for her to argue that she was not aware of what she was communicating by her dress is like Barry Bonds saying he thought he was rubbing down with flaxseed oil, okay?
I always use the line that for Nancy Pelosi, you get one shot at a facelift. If it doesn't work the first time, let it go.
That's a cheap shot.
You all saw the famous photo from the weekend of Hillary looking so haggard and looking like 92 years old. If that's the face of experience, I think it's going to scare away a lot of those independent voters who are on the fence.
I just think that if she knew how it made her look, so alternately soppy and bitchy, she'd stop it. But she can't help herself, can she? She just can't.
Well, is she going to castrate Steny Hoyer if he gets in there? Is she going to say you may be there in form, but you're not there in fact?
Mark has been saying it for months. Men won't vote for Hillary Clinton because she reminds them of their nagging wives.
When Barack Obama speaks, men hear, take off for the future. And when Hillary Clinton speaks, men hear, take out the garbage.
When she raises her voice, and when a lot of women do, you know, it's as I say, it reaches a point where every husband in America has heard it one time or another.
When she reacts the way she reacts to Obama, with just the look toward him, looking like everyone's first wife standing outside a probate court.
I don't know what they're getting at here, Tucker. What do you think they're saying about Hillary?
I don't know, but that is so perfect. As I have often said, when she comes on television, I involuntarily cross my legs.
I know you do.
I could see her in there.
Give me a pack of cool cigarettes, will you?
Men are depressed, and it's their own fault, because men are allowing women to take over the world.
We had the hammer, Tom DeLay, and now we have the Wicked Witch of the West, you know, Nancy Pelosi.
Let me tell you how short Hillary's leash is. She said, you'll have to ask my husband.
But she says he knows how I feel.
As if you're a guy going door to door trying to sell something, and she said, you'll have to wait for my husband to get home. Let's not forget, and I'll be brutal, the reason she's a U.S. Senator, the reason she's a candidate for president, the reason she may be a front runner is her husband messed around.
Yeah, but
that's how she got to be senator from New York. We keep forgetting it. She didn't win there on her merit.
You get a woman in the Oval Office, most powerful person in the world, what's the downside?
You mean besides the PMS and the mood swings, right?
the reality is you also would like to break this glass ceiling. You would like to have some representation. I mean, it's embarrassing, Tucker. We're 68th in the world for representation of women in our Congress.
I'm not embarrassed. I almost never, when I get up at a baseball game and sing the Star-Spangled Banner, I don't hang my head because we don't have enough women in Congress. I'm actually not embarrassed by it at all.
Where are the governors? Where are the big state women governors? Where they are? Where are they? Name one.
Most voters are women, okay? That's just a fact. So if women were so anxious to have women in Congress and there were so many great female candidates running, then why wouldn't Congress be 52% female?
This campaign right now is not the greatest example of why women should rule the world.
Well, this is exactly why men shouldn't allow the vagina monologue to become a dialogue.
I know that's a sexist comment,
It totally
but
is.
There's truth to it.
Oops. Oh, I got it. No, I don't get it. Thank you. We need to stop it. Just exit out. Thank you. So, obviously, if you ignore the dramatic music and what in the US would be seen as the very left-leaning message in between the video compilations, we can just focus on the actual videos or the cuts from various news channels. And of course, some of that was from Fox News, which of course is a conservative TV channel in the US, and you would expect them to be critical of Hillary Clinton. But also a lot of that was from non-conservative TV channels. So certainly a certain journalist from MSNBC, which is a very left-leaning channel in the US called Chris Matthews, was very prominently featured in this compilation. So this is not in and of itself a partisan issue. So there's some things to talk about. I think a seminar like this is in fact very appropriate, especially now that we're about to enter a new election cycle. And that's why I thought today I would start by talking a little bit about Hillary Clinton and the 2008 campaign, which was really just a treasure trove of interesting examples of gender dynamics. Talk a little bit about not just her, but the general gender dynamics that one may have seen. And then end with talking a little bit about what's about to happen with 2016. Where are we today? Hillary Clinton is running again, and in terms of have we learned anything from 2008 that we can use in 2016? But first we can ask, are Americans ready to elect a woman to high office? It's kind of an insulting question, but anyway, Pew Research Center asked it in 2008, and 51% of respondents said no. Now granted, that was right after Barack Obama had beat Hillary Clinton for the nomination, so demonstrably 51% of respondents were correct. But you can also ask, does it matter? In 2014, so last year, the Pew Research Center asked, do you care if the U.S. elects a female president in your lifetime? And 57% said, we don't care. It doesn't matter to us. And 38% said that they did hope that the U.S. will elect a female president in their lifetime. So there's also that. While gender dynamics are real, which we're going to talk a lot more about, it doesn't mean that everyone necessarily cares or think it's important to elect women to high office in the US. So we can keep that in mind as well. Okay, so Hillary Clinton, 2008. The Hillary Clinton of 2008 was a very different kind of candidate than the Hillary Clinton we're seeing in this cycle, which I will get back to. The main emphasis of her campaign was that she was an experienced, competent person who was the right person for the office of the president. It was not about her being the right woman for the office of president. It was about her being the right person. So her message was, I am more fit for the office of president than this newcomer, Barack Obama. Of course, this is the nomination battle. I'm more fit for office than Barack Obama because I'm more experienced, which was correct, of course. Barack Obama was a newcomer. He had served at the state senate in Illinois for quite some time, but only a few years as senator. So only a few years in national politics when he started running for president. Whereas Hillary Clinton had served a term and a half as senator from New York. And then, depending on whether you feel that's a pro or a con, she did have 8 years of experience from being in the White House, but as First Lady. So she really had a heavy emphasis on the fact that she had the competence, the experience, the knowledge of the issues that would make her, if she were elected president, and she used this phrase over and over again in 2008, ready to govern from day one. The first day when she would get into the White House, she would know what to do. Hint, hint, Barack Obama wouldn't have a clue what to do because he was so inexperienced and new. And so this really took front and center stage. And this issue of her being the first female candidate to run for president kind of got pushed to the back, which is extremely interesting. And first off, I have to say, she wasn't the first female to run for president. There were at least 4 that had done so before her, dating back to 1870. But she was seen as the first female to run for the nomination because she was seen as actually having a shot at it. So she was the first credible female candidate, if you can say that in a non-condescending way. But she didn't want to focus on that. And I think when you see, based on the video we just saw, one starts to understand why. She did not think, or her campaign did not think in 2008 that that is a message that American voters were ready for. And this is the nomination, so we're talking about Democratic voters, which is very, very interesting. And I think one of the most prominent campaign ads in the 2008 cycle was called the 3 a.m. call, which we're going to show now. And that really, I think, brings home the message of what it was that she wanted to focus on and how she wanted to contrast herself with Barack Obama. And, oh my God, I'm never going to figure this out.
Just slightly to the right.
Yeah.
And your children are safe and asleep. But there's a phone in the White House and it's ringing. Something's happening in the world. Your vote will decide who answers that call. Whether it's someone who already knows the world's leaders, knows the military, someone tested and ready to lead in a dangerous world. It's 3 a.m. and your children are safe and asleep. Who do you want answering the phone?
I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
So here, the point is not that she's a woman answering the phone. It's not even that it's her. It's that it's the most competent person that is answering that 3 a.m. call when Putin has done something crazy. You don't want this inexperienced state senator from Illinois. You want the person that knows what to do when she gets into the White House. Okay, that was generally how Hillary Clinton wanted to portray herself in 2008. And the thing is, you don't always get the campaign that you want, right? You don't always get to present yourself the way that you want to present yourself. You have to go through the media, you have to go through journalists, voters. And the 2008 presidential cycle really illustrated some common gender dynamics or hurdles or problems, challenges that many female political candidates face in the US, whether it be for national office or not. And the first, I think we saw a good example of in the first video, which is sort of gendered media coverage, where the tendency is to focus not only, but more on style rather than substance. So we saw a lot of examples of talking about the cosmetics, talking about hair and clothes and who looked good and who looked like a 92-year-old witch and all these really relevant things for presidential politics. And this is something that many researchers have found simply is just the case. If you are a female running for a political office, the tendency for many journalists is to want to talk about style. And then there's what's called gender stereotypes, stereotyping the candidate into a certain kind of stylized category. Whether, and there's been some research done on this as well, and I'm sure there are many kinds of stereotypical categories, but the four that I found was the mother category, portraying someone as sort of the mother, which means you're probably a little bit too soft, a little bit too caring, or the very old stereotype, the sex object, meaning you're too feminine, you're too sexy. I think Sarah Palin often fell into that category in 2008. And then there's what's called the pet or the mascot, where you're just sort of along for the ride. You're kind of too stupid, but you're pretty, so you get to be along for the ride. Sarah Palin also fell into that category in 2008. Or last, the Iron Maiden, the strong, too strong woman, the woman who is trying to be a man, the Iron Lady. And certainly, I think, because Hillary Clinton tried so hard to be a person running for office, not a woman running for office in 2008, she was often portrayed in the Iron Maiden or too masculine category. And illustrating these two gender dynamics was the just intense, massive, massive focus on Clinton's appearance throughout 2007 and 2008. Especially her body. There was a lot of talk about her being overweight. We heard from the video that I showed in the beginning that she didn't look very well, look very good, didn't know how to dress. There was an issue in 2008 that Hillary had cankles. Not even going to explain to you what that is. If any Americans are in the room, you'll know what that is. That she chose to wear pantsuits, which are pants and a suit jacket, rather than skirts or dresses. And that she was old. Which is interesting because often when men are old, they're experienced and wise. But she was just old and haggard. And there was a lot of talk about that. And whereas Sarah Palin was clearly the sex object or the pet, Clinton, as we also heard in one of the videos, was the old shrew. And talking about being old, now this is Rush Limbaugh from Fox News, who is a very well-known conservative commentator. And he actually said on the air that he just didn't think that the American people wanted to watch a female president age before their eyes, because it's not going to be a pretty sight. Which I think is a good reason to not vote for someone. Or the Oklahoman, which is a newspaper, referenced Clinton's frequent wearing of dark pantsuits to conceal her bottom-heavy figure. Extremely relevant commentary. Then there's a third kind of gender dynamic where, and I think this certainly was seen in the Clinton case, where women face what's called a double bind, meaning if you are feminine, you're not as likely to be judged competent. Whereas if you're seen as competent, you're not likely to be seen as feminine enough. So it's really hard to find that balance between being a woman, which traditionally means that you're feminine, and being seen as competent enough, or experienced enough, or tough enough for whatever the job is. And I think it's fair to say that in 2008, Clinton really struggled to find the right balance between this competence experience that she really wanted to focus on and this feminine sort of likability. That is, I think in fairness, a really hard balance to strike. And Hillary really made the point many times that she was not a woman running for president. She was a person running for president who happened to be a woman. And that's how she wanted to be understood. That's how she wanted to be judged. But it wasn't something that especially many in the media wanted to play along with. They weren't going to give her that. They were going to treat her as a woman running for president. And what was this double bind issue was really, really difficult because the person she was running against, mainly, I'm leaving out the other Democratic candidates. So Barack Obama was considered extremely likable. How many people were following the 2008 election cycle? How many people remember sort of getting to know Obama? How many people were not completely charmed by this man? You're all liars. There you go. Obama was an extremely likable candidate. He was very charming. There have been written many articles, and not just from the right, about the extent to which the mainstream media in the US were completely in love with Obama. And I think that's fair. He was the popular kid in the 2008 class. And Hillary was not. So even if she was struggling already with the competence/likability balance, it was made even harder by running against Barack Obama, who was so likable, who was so charming, who was so popular. And one of the few times when Obama did something that was not popular in the press is this discussion of Hillary's so-called likability, sort of meaning, do people like you? Are you charming? Do people respond to you? We have a little video. I've just given up. It's quite short, but
I understand where she's coming from. I will not have a super PAC. Look,
it's
we
next
announced.
One, sorry.
My question to you is simply this. What can you say to the voters of New Hampshire on this stage tonight who see your resume and like it, but are hesitating on the likability issue, where they seem to like Barack Obama more?
Well, that hurts my feelings.
I'm sorry, Senator. I'm sorry.
But I'll try to go on. He's very likable. I agree with that. I don't think I'm that bad.
You're likable enough.
Thank
Hillary,
you so much.
I appreciate that. So I think actually Hillary Clinton responded to that brilliantly, but it became a meme in the 2008 campaign. You're likable enough, which was actually an extremely condescending thing to say, and Barack Obama got a lot of bad press from that because he was seen as being the popular kid in class, was putting down the kid who was not popular by a backhanded compliment as you're likable enough. And of course that was, although that moment gave Hillary Clinton a little bit of sympathy, ironically there was another moment in 2008 that really got her sympathy when it was almost too late. There was a moment in 2008 that made people like her more, but it was sort of too late. And it was, I believe, in New Hampshire, and she was asked about, when it's so hard to run for president, you're tired, everyone is ragging on you, the media hates you, Barack Obama's doing better, why do you even do it? And Hillary Clinton had a moment when she was answering that was being referred to as the cry, which was not crying, it was getting slightly emotional. And I thought we would watch that video as well. I'm keeping you busy today. Earn your pay. Yeah.
It's not easy. And I couldn't do it if I just didn't, passionately believe it was the right thing to do. I have so many opportunities from this country. I just don't want to see us fall backwards. So, this is very personal for me. It's not just political. It's not just public. I see what's happening, and we have to reverse it. And some people think elections are a game. They think it's like who's up or who's down. It's about our country. It's about our kids' futures. And it's really about all of us together. Some of us put ourselves out there and do this against some pretty difficult odds. And we do it, each one of us, because we care about our country. But some of us are right and some of us are wrong. Some of us are ready and some of us are not.
It turns into
some of us
campaign
know what we
speech,
will
so
do
can
on
cut
day
it.
one, and some of us haven't.
Thank you so much. Now, ironically, from a candidate who didn't want to focus on her feminine qualities or being a woman, this moment when she kind of got a little emotional got like this effusive response from the press saying, oh, she's not a robot, she's not an old shrew, she has feelings. With, of course, some prominent exceptions. I'm sure you've all heard of the comedian Bill Maher, who said the first thing a woman does, of course, is cry. So that was nice. But in sort of wrapping up 2008, gotta love these two girls. It was 2008, I think it's fair to say, was really rife with all kinds of gender dynamics and a lot of just overt sexism, so much so that Saturday Night Live, which is a sketch show on Saturday nights, actually did a long piece, about 7 minutes, of Tina Fey as Sarah Palin and Amy Poehler as Hillary Clinton, addressing sexism in the campaign. Of course, doing it in a funny way, but just essentially a 7-minute-long dialogue on the horrible sexism that they had seen in 2008. Now, I don't have time to play it now, I'm really sorry, but I go on YouTube and watch it. It's really funny. So, then, of course, the question is, well, maybe then Hillary Clinton lost the nomination in 2008 because, people are sexist. And no, that's not why she lost the nomination to Barack Obama in 2008, and certainly not the reason why later John McCain and Sarah Palin lost against the Obama-Biden ticket. It had really nothing to do with that. Obama was not only more likable, he was also a lot better at campaigning in pretty much all respects, and there were some prominent issues that the voters were with Obama on against Hillary Clinton. Prominently in the Democratic nomination fight, of course, was the issue of the Iraq War, which Hillary Clinton had voted for, and Barack Obama had not the opportunity to vote for because he was in Illinois. So that was good for him. And of course, the economy, which cratered right before the general election, making it highly unlikely that people would vote for another Republican administration. So the issues won. It really didn't have that much to do with sexism. 2008 is not important because it proves that sexism loses you elections. It's important because it proves the extra hurdles that certain female candidates have to jump because of certain dynamics that are present. So the question then becomes, what is 2016 going to look like when 2008 was such a disaster, if you care about gender dynamics? First, what kind of candidate is Hillary Clinton being this time? Is she going to be different? Is she going to strive to be more likable? And I think there are two sort of instincts that she's being pulled in. And it's the 2008 instinct towards more experience, competence, focusing. Now Hillary Clinton's CV is even better. She was Secretary of State, as Torunn said, and focused a lot on women's issues. So her CV has only gotten better. Versus, of course, the fact that this time, she's not running against another historic candidate. In 2008, it was historic female, historic black president. Now there's no other historic candidate running in the Democratic nomination. There's no Latino candidate, for example. So this time it's a much bigger deal to be the female candidate. And is she going to go in that direction? And certainly also, there are other female candidates. In the Republican nomination contest, we're going to talk for just a few minutes about a woman called Carly Fiorina. Okay, so Hillary Rodham Clinton 2016 edition. So far, it really seems like what she has learned from 2008 is that it's okay to focus on the fact that she's a woman. That it's going to be maybe a positive thing. That it's something that voters will relate to. It's okay to talk about the feminine influences in her life. And one of the first ads that she released is a campaign ad called Family Strong, which I think we're going to have a look at that, and you can think about in your minds how that contrasts with the 3 a.m. call ad. Do you want to help me again?
Her parents abandoned her when she was just 8 years old. She was mistreated, but she never gave up. And she taught me to do the same. My mom's life and what she went through are big reasons why standing up for kids and families became such a big part of my life.
After law school, she could have gone to a big firm, but instead went to work for the Children's Defense Fund. In Arkansas, she fought for school reform to change lives forever. Then as First Lady, she helped get health care for 8 million kids. You probably know the rest. The senator who made sure the heroes and families of 9/11 got the care they needed. The Secretary of State who joined the cabinet of the man who defeated her. Because when your president calls, you serve. And now a new title, Grandma.
I believe that when families are strong, America is strong. It's your time. I'm Hillary Clinton, and I approve this message.
I think the contrast is just striking. It's all about being a mom and a daughter and a grandma. And if you noticed at the very end, she said something that she's saying a lot this year that she did not say 8 years ago, which is, it's your time. It's about you. It's not about me. She got criticized a lot in 2008 for making it about her, which I find to be a very curious accusation because all presidential candidates make it about them. But in any case, this year, she's talking about it's you. Now it's the time of the American people, by which she means the American middle class. And I will work for you. And so she's really trying to send some very different messages than she did back in 2008. And she's also talking a lot about gender issues, specific women's issues, and tying them in with what the Hillary Clinton campaign believes will be the main issue of 2016, which is economics, inequality, earned sick days, paid family leave, all these kinds of things that she's trying to make both an economic issue and as well a family or gender issue. And it's just a huge change from 2008, and it signals to me that the campaign now thinks it's okay to talk about these things, that the electorate will be more susceptible to these things, and that it's okay to be a female candidate as opposed to a candidate who happens to be female. Okay. Now, just quickly, Hillary Clinton's main opponent right now is Bernie Sanders. I'm sure many of you have heard of this guy. He's a senator from Vermont. And what's interesting is that he's been doing very, very well. He's challenging Hillary Clinton from the left, talking a lot about economic inequality and economic policies. But where he's not doing so well is among women voters, where Hillary Clinton beats him significantly. And that's definitely an issue for another day because we don't have time to talk about that. But the role that female voters play in American electoral politics is really, really important because, as Tucker Carlson pointed out in our first video, they are a majority of the electorate. We're going to move quickly because I am running out of time. So, the other woman in the race. There is a woman called Carly Fiorina who is running for the Republican nomination. Former CEO of Hewlett-Packard from California. She has, now there's like 17 Republican candidates at the moment. There's a big field, but Carly Fiorina is the only woman. And what she has done, she has a very clear strategy, because from the minute she announced, she has been going after Hillary Clinton. The other Republican candidates are doing lots of different things. She is focusing like a laser beam on Hillary Clinton. And she even used Hillary Clinton in her announcement video, which we can watch.
Getting ready to do something too. I'm running for president.
Our founders never intended us to have a professional political class. They believed that citizens and leaders needed to step forward. We know the only way to reimagine our government is to reimagine who is leading it. I'm Carly Fiorina, and I'm running for president. If you're tired of the sound bites, the vitriol, the pettiness, the egos, the corruption, if you believe that it's time to declare the end of identity politics, if you believe that it's time to declare the end of lowered expectations, if you believe that it's time for citizens to stand up to the political class and say enough, then join us. It's time for us to empower our citizens, to give them a voice in our government, to come together to fix what has been broken about our politics and our government for too long. Because we can do this together.
Now, I don't know if you noticed that, but she said it's time to end identity politics. Which for me, what she's saying, the message I'm getting is it's time to not have a black president or a female president, the way that the Democrats like to talk about identities and groups. It's an argument that the Democrats and the Republicans have had for quite a long time. So Carly Fiorina has made Hillary Clinton the main target of her campaign, and she keeps hinting that the Republicans really need a woman to face off against what they all assume is that Hillary Clinton will win the Democratic nomination and thus be in the general election. There was recently the first debate among the Republicans, and there had to be 2 debates because there's so many candidates. She didn't make it into the prominent debate with the other candidates that had favorable ratings in the polls, but she did so well, she won the debate, the second-tier debate, and she's currently enjoying very favorable media coverage. That doesn't mean anything. It's August 2015. But right now, she's doing very well, and she's focusing a lot on Hillary Clinton. Okay, so in terms of the gender dynamics that we might see in 2016, it's obviously way too early to tell. And I don't like to make predictions. But what I'm kind of interested in seeing is whether the press has learned any lessons from 2008 or how they're going to treat the female candidates that are in the race. And I like to not talk about Donald Trump, but unfortunately he made himself extremely relevant for this presentation because he recently had some things to say about women in politics. So we are going to play 2 videos by Donald Trump. Yeah, it's really hard. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Mr. Trump, one of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. I've been challenged by so many people, and I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everybody. And frankly, what I say, and oftentimes it's fun, it's kidding, we have a good time, what I say is what I say. And honestly, Megan, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what? We need strength. We need...
Yeah, just 1 second. So this, as you might expect, engendered some controversy in the U.S., and so that was a Thursday night, and that entire weekend Donald Trump was asked to comment on his comments, and this was how he responded on an interview with CNN.
I don't have a lot of respect for Megyn Kelly. She's a lightweight, and, you know, she came out there reading her little script and trying to, you know, be tough and be sharp. And when you meet her, you realize she's not very tough and she's not very sharp. She's Zippo. Well, I just don't respect her as a journalist. I have no respect for her. I don't think she's very good. I think she's highly overrated. But when I came out there, you know, what am I doing? I'm not getting paid for this. I go out there and, you know, they start saying, lift up your arm if you're going to, and, you know, I didn't know there'd be 24 million people. I figured, but I knew it was going to be a big crowd because I get big crowds. I get ratings. They call me the ratings machine. So I have, you know, she gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. And, you know, you could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
Okay. So the last thing Donald Trump said was you could see there's blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever, which was then taken to mean that Megyn Kelly was on her period and was thus hormonal, and that's why she was asking Donald Trump these difficult questions. That also engendered some controversy. And I'm not really going to talk so much more about that, other than it seems that Donald Trump may keep this gender issue alive and well, at least in the Republican nomination contest. But we're not seeing any of this on the Democratic side. In terms of learning lessons from 2016, Hillary Clinton has clearly learned a specific lesson. She's much more comfortable being a female candidate rather than a candidate who happens to be female. And in fact, one of the more interesting videos that her campaign released this summer was talking about Republicans playing the gender card, where she used a critique that Senate Majority Leader, who's a Republican, Mitch McConnell, accused Clinton of playing the gender card in her campaign, you know, talking about women and women's issues. And they then put out an ad where they took that opportunity to, using a deck of cards, showing all the Republican candidates' positions on women's issues, such as abortion and all these things, and making the case that if you are for women's issues, then you don't want to vote for any of the Republican candidates. And we don't have to play that video because I've gone over my time and you're video exhausted. So I will just say thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Hilde. This was really, really interesting, and I'm sure that people are burning with questions now. I suggest that we take a few in a row, not one by one, but gather a few. And if you can please say your name and affiliation, institutional affiliation, when you ask your question, so that Hilde knows who you are. Who would like to start? Yeah.
Kan jeg låne et ark hos deg, Torunn? Torunn. Sorry. I need a pen and a paper because I'm horribly unprepared now. Thank you.
Is it working? Okay. So, my name is Jenny Lorentzen. I work here at PRIO with the Gender Research Group. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. I really, really enjoyed it. My question is about the sort of kind of sexism that you described very well in the 2008 campaign cycle, and which we probably expect to see also in the 2016 cycle. But I read an interview with Gro Harlem Brundtland this weekend in one of the Norwegian newspapers, and she said that when she ran for presidency and when she won, she got a lot of kind of that type of sexism, or yeah. And she also said that she hasn't seen that with our current prime minister. Mm. And do you think there's a potential for this type of development in the US? That's my question.
You're okay.
Yeah, we take, if it's okay with you. Yeah, Torunn.
Toril Skar. I'm retired, but formerly I was at NUPI. I've written a book about the 73 women who have been presidents and prime ministers in the world. And one of the things that I just want to note is that compared with what I've seen, Hillary Clinton is up against one of the most difficult challenges, because it's a very big country, and the larger, the more difficult. Mm. It's also a question of her military role, and there's a very strong military in the U.S., and I don't know if they're in the campaign, if this comes up. I mean, if she considered strong enough to lead one of the most military countries in the world. Also, the political system makes a difference, and the problem here is that, I mean, the role of the president it's so strong, and there's no prime minister, and the political system is in many ways, I mean, the party system is in many ways does not support the candidates. I wonder if you would comment a little bit on how the parties work in this connection. Mm. And then the question also is of the women's movement. I mean, as I've seen, where women have managed, there have been voices demanding or supporting a woman candidate. And how is that in the U.S. now? I mean, I remember in 1974, we were looking to the women movement in the U.S., and I remember I discussed with them, and they said, well, we'll get a male black president before we will get a woman president, which turned out to be true many years later, which means the sexism even deeper than racism. And then now the question is there a chance, and what support can Hillary get? Thank you.
Since she had two questions, maybe
three. So
yeah.
About Solberg Brundtland, I think that's really interesting that she said that. And I don't know anything about Norwegian politics, but I do find it interesting that I mean, we have unfortunately sort of overlapping factors, because Solberg is conservative, right, and Brundtland is not. And certainly the common wisdom has been that it would be easier for a conservative female candidate in a country to win rather than a left-leaning candidate, which I think partly ties into this issue of the role of foreign policy and security policy, in that conservatives are often seen as tougher when it comes to these issues. I think there might be something there, but other than that, I can't say anything, because Norway and the U.S. are so different because of these issues that Toril Skar brings up. Because I haven't at all I've done is show you fun videos, because that's what I like to do with my time. But there are structural constraints here that are really important. Institutions such as the parties, which are extremely weak in the U.S. There's really no hierarchical party system that can push forward a female candidate like you could with Arbeiderpartiet or Hilde in the U.S. It's not like that at all, right? And so in that sense, they're sort of on their own, apart from there are certain interest groups or lobby organizations such as Emily's List, which will fund specifically female candidates, because find them and try to promote them. And in terms of the U.S. system, where the president is the commander-in-chief and has such a prominent role with foreign and security policy, I do think that that's very important. And previously, what you've seen is a lot of discussion of are Americans ready for a female president to be commander-in-chief, I think, is the unspoken continuation of that question, right? And this is where I think 2016 will be different than 2008 because you now have a female candidate who's been Secretary of State, which is not the same as, Secretary of Defense, and it's not the same as President, but it's managing foreign policy at the highest level. And so in that sense, I think that maybe that will mute that issue a little bit and maybe make for a more interesting debate between if Hillary Clinton becomes the candidate, whoever is on the other side, right, in the general election. In terms of women's movement, and is sexism even deeper than racism? I lived in the U.S. in 2008 when Barack Obama won, and it was certainly it was such an interesting experience. And you did, based on the campaign, I'm not sure you can say that's, is sexism deeper than racism? I can't answer that. But in the campaign itself, it certainly seemed like it was still okay to say sexist things, but it was not okay to say racist things. I guess it's as far as I would go in answering your question.
Okay, then it was Kristin in the sofa there.
Yeah, thank you. It's wonderful to listen to you. I think we should do this like every 4 months until the election. My question is about the production of female candidates on the Republican side. Just why can't they come up with anyone who actually resembles Scott Walker? If you look at Sarah Palin and Carly Fiorina, she had a pretty abysmal track record at Hewlett Packard. Sarah Palin jumped ship in her governorship to, do a reality show. These are not women with a solid professional track record. What do you think? How do you think this is going to evolve? Because clearly you can see a lot of potential candidates in the Senate and in the Congress, and the strongest and most, high-profiled Democratic women are going to be too old in 8 years' time.
Nobody wants to see a woman age in office. We've learned
no, but
that
much. They're going to be too old to be interested.
I know what you mean, yeah.
So basically, there is a whole crowd which I think they're just biding their time. But how do you think this is going to play along? Because so far, most of the interesting stuff has really happened on the Republican side.
Take one more. Lisa Cooper.
Hi, Hilde.
Hi.
So fun to hear you as always. And my question was actually quite similar, sort of looking beyond 2016, because we don't see sort of that funnel of relevant candidates on either side, except for Elizabeth Warren, which everyone is talking about, which everyone would love to see as president. So it's, cracking that glass ceiling, just like we have in Norway, trying to get everyone into boards and women in management. Why isn't there more of a push there? And a very good point with Republicans, because, Carly Fiorina sort of came from the outside. They have very few good, relevant candidates from the inside. So maybe there's more, the ceiling has been lowered. Does that make any sense? Or,
Okay, so in terms of GOP female candidates, I think there are more female politicians in the Democratic Party that are governors or senators, so that are more naturally future presidential candidates, and you don't really have that in the GOP field yet. But right now you have the governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, who is, many people think, going to be a future star in the GOP. I could certainly see her run in 4 years. And I think, actually, when you look at the two parties right now and who's running on the Democratic side and who's running on the Republican side, the Republican field is so much more interesting and so much younger and more diverse. And if we can just put Trump aside for a second, there are some very interesting candidates on the Republican side. And I think right now you don't see the strong female Republican candidates, but I think they're coming. And I think you're right that the Democratic female candidates are a bit older because they have been part of this much longer. So in the long run, this will be good for the Republican Party. I think that maybe answers both of your questions.
Henrik, and then Helga.
Henrik Syse from PRIO. Thank you for a brilliant presentation. You're also such a good presenter. So I wish you could just keep on talking. But I'll say a few words. Just two quick questions. First of all, the Secretary of State issue. Do you think that's a strength or a weakness for Hillary Clinton? And it's early to say, because obviously during 4 years as Secretary of State, you get to do quite a lot of different things. How much will she run on that? I recently read Bob Gates's book, Duty. He was Secretary of Defense. I mean, she could just take a few lines from that. He's full of admiration. He's a Republican. Yep. He says that she is one of the most formidable politicians he's ever worked with. He has some critical words here and there, but mostly just said she's strong, she's knowledgeable, she's everything that, you know, a good politician should be. Will she run on that, or is she afraid that she'll run into Benghazi and Libya hasn't worked out well and all of that? And my second question would be, and you hinted at it, are there any other good Democratic candidates in case her campaign falls apart? I mean, there's this email controversy. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. Bernie Sanders, I think, is too far to the left for the American electorate to actually be electable. And Joe Biden, I don't know if he's actually running. Do you see anyone who could come, or is it too late? Is it only Hillary now? Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much for a really fabulous presentation. It was very, very good. I want to ask you something about the role of the media, because it seems to me that compared to European countries, the American campaigns are extremely filtered through the media, so that the personality of the candidates will always be almost defined by what these guys say. And I'm saying guys, even though there are 2 or 3 significant women in American media, it is really scary. Now I know that perhaps half of you things were from Fox, because they're so, you know, dreadful. But in general, it seems to me that it is much more difficult for an American presidential candidate. It's not the glass ceiling, it's almost like the media ceiling. That is the one thing. The other is that I've been very unhappy about Hillary and her emails. I don't know whether it's her stubbornness. Does it reflect about the fact that she even got this idea, you know, of having this in her own home, costs the voter millions. And I was wondering if it had to do with her sleep. I mean, that she gets up at 4 in the morning and then she doesn't want to go to state. Or why would she ever be so quiet and so reluctant to talk? She's made herself very vulnerable, in my eyes, through her reaction or her resistance to being open and honest.
Great questions. Okay, Secretary of State, strength or weakness? It just depends on what party you're from, because if you're a Democrat, you think it's a huge strength, and if you're a Republican, you think it's a huge weakness because of Benghazi and Libya. And there are 2 critiques, again, from the Republicans when it comes to Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. The first one is she didn't do anything. What did she do? She traveled around the world, but she doesn't have any accomplishments. She can't point to a big sort of prominent foreign policy that she herded through her 4 years and executed and can sort of have as her foreign policy trophy. I guess they don't think women's issues count, because that has been her big thing. The second thing is Benghazi, which Congress will not stop investigating ever. And in fact, there's a Benghazi committee on the Hill, and that's where the email controversy started. It was the Benghazi committee that found some emails from her server and wondered, what is this? And that's where that started. So I think, depending on who the Republican, if she is the nominee, it depends on who the other person is, right? Does she need to beat him on foreign policy or not? None of the other candidates have had really, or likely candidates. They're mostly governors, so they haven't been on the national level, so they don't have any foreign policy experience anyway, unless it's a senator, maybe that's been in the Foreign Relations Committee. So I think that'll depend who it is, how much she'll play on that. But in terms of other good Democrats, if the email controversy takes her down, and this is really fascinating to follow, because she is currently getting a lot of resistance, not just from Republicans, but also from people in her own party and otherwise sympathetic journalists who are very critical, like you're saying, basically wondering, the question is not whether she's done anything illegal. It's not a criminal investigation, and nobody thinks she's done anything illegal. The question is, does this show poor judgment? And it does show poor judgment. It does show that she's done something very stupid and then hasn't really been very good at explaining why she did it. Nobody believes her. Nobody trusts her explanations on why she chose to use this personal server when she was Secretary of State, and why she chose to delete all her personal emails before she. I mean, it's really not a good thing for Hillary Clinton, and it plays the biggest problem is that it plays into the old narrative of the Clintons as secretive, as conspiratorial, as never wanting to give more than the 1 inch that they have to give. That they're so distrustful of other people and journalists that they will go through all these hoops to be extra secretive. And so right now, her favorability, unfavorability rating is going in the wrong direction. And part of that has to do with people viewing her less and less as trustworthy the more they hear about this email controversy. So if she's very unlucky, then you will get to the point where the email controversy will sink her campaign, and someone else will have to step in. And that someone will not be Bernie Sanders, right? Because he will not win a general election. And so I can only imagine the scorned former candidates. I don't know if there's a John Kerry out there or who it is that would jump in delighted. Nobody's jumping in now because Hillary Clinton is in the race. And if Hillary Clinton is in the race, she'll probably win the nomination. If she's taken out of the equation, you could only imagine how many Democrats would want to jump in. And I think it's sort of endless, the list. You could have a GOP situation on the Democratic side. But there's a lot of talk about Joe Biden right now and whether he should jump in. I don't think he's going to. But predictions are dangerous in politics. Or Al Gore.
We have 2 more questions here.
Hi, Hilde.
Hello, Chris.
Hilde's. Thank you for a really, really interesting discussion. I was just wondering if I could ask, what do you think the significance of her husband is in this dynamic? Is he useful to her? Is he a problem for her? How has that relationship been presented in the media?
We take one. Yeah.
This is mainly to ask you to look into the crystal. I guess we haven't quite gotten to the end of the talk yet. In terms of how she would relate to possible Trump third-party candidacy.
Oh, yeah.
I read this piece on Politico the other day, which is, I think she's the current senator, Claire McCaskill, where she wrote about how she had helped fundamentalist candidate Todd Atkin win Republican primaries so she could beat him later. Yeah. And that was pretty harrowing, corrupt reading, I have to say. I was
pretty brilliant.
Not very noble. But I'm just wondering how the Clintons, who seem to have close ties with Trump already, would relate to this.
Yeah. So Bill Clinton, I didn't talk about him at all. And it was the terms of lessons learned from 2008, right? Bill Clinton was... Well, Bill Clinton is a wild card because you never really know what he's going to say. But you do know he's going to say it better than Hillary Clinton. Right? He has the likability factor. She's married to her own kind of Barack Obama in the sense. He's better liked. He's much more eloquent. He connects with people and highlights all the things, not in terms of policy or how she would be as a president, but as a campaigner. All the sense in which the ways in which she falls short. Right? And so I really don't know what she's going to do with him this time around. They didn't know what to do with him last time, and I don't think they know what to do with him now. And I don't have an answer for you other than it's going to be really interesting to see which side they fall down on, hide him or put him out there. I think she's going to use him because she's going to need someone to charm people after the email controversy, and she's not going to be the charmer. Bill Clinton as her VP? No. Who's going to be her VP? It depends on who the GOP nominee is, I think, because you want to balance the other ticket geographically and or demographically, right? So I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. It really depends on the other ticket, and I think it's too soon to tell. I can tell you that I think Hillary Clinton would welcome Donald Trump as an independent candidate with open arms. It would be brilliant. She would win the general election. It would be great. If this turns out to be a huge conspiracy whereby Bill Clinton encouraged Donald Trump to run for the GOP, it's such a brilliant story. I mean, it's the best thing. In fact, one of the things that's sort of saving Hillary Clinton right now is that everyone is focused on Trump. And no matter how poorly she's doing and talking about her emails and her server, Trump is doing something outrageous to the right that everyone is focusing on. So it certainly is really good for the Democrats that Trump is in the GOP contest right now. And if in the general election he ran as an independent, it'd be brilliant, seen from their perspective. So I think she would welcome it. But I don't think he would be her vice president.
Did Kristen have a question that you didn't?
No, that was Trump as independent.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Torunn and Lisa?
Just add an additional question. I think it's fascinating listening to you, but you're talking very much about the persons, and what about the issues? And I mean, I haven't followed American politics closely enough to see, but I mean, are there issues which would make a difference and that would? I mean, the women candidates in other parts of the world that I've seen gain elections, it's been political issues because all the mobbing that you have described exists in practically all countries because they're women, and it's damn if you do and damn if you don't. So being a person as a woman is extremely difficult in politics everywhere, even though it sounds like it must be even tougher in the US than many other places. But then they have managed by issues. So the question is, you mentioned a little bit, but if you could comment a little bit more on what issues could make a difference.
I just can't help but comment on American elections are always about people, never about issues. Unfortunately, I think that's one of our challenges in American politics. But I had two questions. One, I have a lot of friends on the Democratic side that are really afraid Hillary won't win because they don't think she'll appeal to the youth. Yeah, and I can see that. Yeah, you can see how Bernie Sanders, or Saunders, however you say.
Do you mean you lose the nomination?
Pardon?
Nomination or general?
Yeah, general. Yeah,
Oh.
because she won't have that. You know, that same amazing voice that Obama had. I mean, he really mobilized the youth, and one could say that was also one of the key contributors to his general success. So I was just interested in what you thought of that. And the other one was just to help me understand the statistical politics, because everyone is saying on the Republican side they have to get Kasich in there because he's from Ohio and you got to have Ohio. I mean, is it really that important with certain states? I mean, I know, historically every candidate has won Ohio or whatever, but is that just a little bit of a help me understand, is that really strategically critical?
Okay, so in terms of issues, I think at least the Democrats are banking on economic issues being important. But that puts them in an awkward position because the Democrats just had the presidency for 8 years. So if then the Democratic candidate says, our economy sucks and I'm going to fix it, well, then who are you blaming? You're blaming your own president, right? But because of the financial crisis, Clinton knows that a lot of people really care about the fact that wages are not, wages are stagnating, inequality is increasing. The American dream itself is under pressure because people aren't doing better than their parents anymore. They're not, advancing the way that traditionally American generations did. So I'm not sure how she's going to balance that. But I think in terms of issues that will dominate the campaign, I think economic issues will be very important. And then I also think, which is not that normal, it's not that common, but I do think that foreign policy issues will be important, especially you see that the Republican candidates are focusing a lot on particularly the Islamic State and Syria and Iraq, and they're talking a lot about that, signaling that I guess that that's something they're going to want to talk about in the general election. But then you also never know what's going to come up along the way. But just sort of as Obama won on economics and Iraq in 2008, I think actually, ironically, there's going to be a lot of the same stuff going on in 2016. And you're right, of course, issues are really important. And we don't talk about them enough probably because the American political system is so personality focused in that the parties are so weak. You're not talking about really the parties. You're not talking about what will the Democratic Party do when they win the White House. You talk about what will Clinton do if she wins the White House, right? So it's true. It is very personality focused, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but such is the state of things in the U.S. Will Hillary Clinton lose the general election because she won't draw out the youth vote? That is a great question, because the way that the demographics are moving in the U.S. means that if everyone votes who are supposed to vote, the Democrats will win, right? They have a bigger coalition of voters than the Republicans do. But in the U.S., it's not about that. It's about who actually votes on Election Day, because as we know, not a lot of people do. So it's about bringing out your voters, and that's where the youth vote comes in. Because young people never vote, really, in the U.S., and Obama really did impressive thing bringing them out in 2008. And no, she does not have the same appeal. Again, it's this thing about the lack of charisma, the lack of connecting with the voters and bringing out all, the fire in everyone's belly. And she just doesn't do that. And so she will have a problem bringing out the people that Obama brought out, I think. But it just depends on who shows up on Election Day. In terms of Kasich and Ohio, yes, Ohio is extremely important and will continue to be extremely important. But in that the demographics in the U.S. are changing, they're also opening up for new states that previously the Democrats didn't have access to, right? In the Southwest a little bit with Latinos and such. So there is a mitigating factor there. But I think Kasich is one of those who's the former governor of Ohio, is seen as a moderate, is from Ohio, and as such, if he were to be the nominee, would be very dangerous for Hillary Clinton or for the Democratic nominee, for sure.
Okay, we have Henrik here, and there is one
Hannah,
student, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Just want to add very briefly to what you just said. Maybe Kasich is an exception, but generally it seems to me in general elections that Republicans are up for a big problem, and it happened the last time, it happens this time. They're putting themselves so far to the right in the nomination contest that a lot of the candidates are saying things that they don't actually mean. And then they have to jump back on a lot of these things. I mean, this was a big problem for Mitt Romney in 2012. And it seems to be happening again, amazingly. And it has to be gender issues and vis-a-vis Hispanics, but also on a lot of other things. Some of the extreme things, rather extreme things they're saying on Cuba, for instance, doesn't seem to resonate a lot with the general population. I'm not even sure they mean it. And there, Hillary Clinton has an advantage. I don't think she's budging at all from what she actually means. So she can just continue saying the same thing, which seems to me to be an advantage right now that the Democrats have over Republicans in presidential elections. Not necessarily true for Congress, but true, I think, in presidential elections.
Mm-hmm.
Hello. I was wondering what your thoughts are on Carly Fiorina's tactic to kind of run against Hillary Clinton, and does this play into kind of like a stereotype of women bringing each other down, and could Hillary use this to her advantage?
Great questions. So are the GOP going too far right in the nomination contest? I think one of the interesting party dynamics in the 90s and the 2000s has been this sort of diverging to the right and the left of the two parties, where the Republican Party has gone further to the right than the Democratic Party has gone to the left, which means naturally that in the Republican nomination contest, the issues and the fight will be further to the right in terms of where you are in the center, than the Democratic contest will be. So you're absolutely right about that. And I guess this is why you always see the more extreme candidates do well early on, when the only people that are paying attention are the intense partisans, right? So that's why the Trumps of the world and the Michelle Bachmanns of the world and the anti-abortion candidates of the world always do these days well early on in the nomination contest, because the contest is far out on the right. Luckily for the Republicans, the general public isn't paying attention really right now. So in many ways, the fact that people don't really follow I mean, not everyone is like us. They don't actually feverishly follow this like a year and a half before it's happening. So in the general election, many voters probably don't know what happened in the nomination contest. And there's just, you know, the fact that often there's just flip-flopping. There's just, well, that's not really what I said, et cetera, et cetera. But yes, they do go very far right in the nomination contest. But that's also why, traditionally, after the sort of more extreme candidates get their day in the sun, the more moderate candidate is the one that the party gathers behind and puts forth, right? And that's sort of why, despite the Michelle Bachmanns of the world and everything, in 2008, Mitt Romney in the end won the day, right? Even though he wasn't that likable, it wasn't that exciting for people. So this is only going to be an issue if the GOP then actually nominates someone who is extreme, right? If they don't fall behind the moderate candidate. And we'll see how that goes this time around. In terms of the Fiorina tactic, actually, you just made me aware of something. I'm wondering, I mean, we can count down the hours and minutes, right, until the media starts talking about the cat fight, I'm sure. It just occurred to me that there's so much more fun gender dynamics to come here. Because she really has, I mean, she basically, what she's doing is she's trying to signal that she means business. She's not concerned about all these other petty fights on the right. She's concerned with their main contender, which is Hillary Clinton, and talking about how they're different on the issues, which is refreshing. And I think that's serving her very well, and she's being seen as a serious candidate. But I don't think she'll win the nomination. But she might be an interesting pick for a VP on the GOP ticket.
Kristin, did you have a comment to a question?
About the cat fight in May.
Oh man, I missed it.
No, my question is demographics. Particularly the group of Latin American voters will grow coming from traditionally macho countries. And how do you think that will influence the kind of female candidates we might see coming?
Latino voters? Yeah. So, yeah. What I think for 2016, the Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush, I think, are good candidates because they have an avenue into Latino vote that no other Republican candidate would have, which could really play havoc with the Democratic calculus. But you're saying maybe they're not as apt to vote for a female candidate? Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. Well, it is true that in the U.S., the Republican Party in general, the strategists, are thinking that we should be able to get these Latino voters over into the Republican Party because we are more socially conservatives, and we think so are they, like you're saying. But as long as they have all these candidates that say all these things about Latinos, that isn't really going to happen. But in the long term, the Republicans think that they will be able to attract Latinos because of this social conservatism, which then I suppose could play negatively out for a female candidate from the other party. But I haven't actually thought about that. But that's a really good question. But I can't give you anything more than that, I think.
Oh, there are two more. If you can be very, very quick, because we are coming to a close.
Thank you, Hilde. Maria Jumbert, also researcher here at PRIO. My question is coming back to the issue question. To what extent do you think there is a demand for these typically female questions related to labor or working rights? You mentioned that Hillary Clinton is raising this as a competitive advantage for the business, etc. What's the demand from the voters on these questions?
Hi, Heidi Skjeseth from Dagsavisen. This is a follow-up of a couple of other questions, and I guess the theme of the whole discussion, if you could share briefly a couple of thoughts of why the glass ceiling is so much thicker in the US than in many other European countries at least, and do you think it will crack this time?
And if I may add a question. I was thinking, you mentioned briefly the gender card, and we know that the female electorate is very important to Hillary Clinton. To what extent do you think that she will, what should I say, dare play out more of these cards in a America that is quite conservative? I mean, we know where she stands on issues like abortion and family policy is a very important issue in U.S. politics. So to what extent do you think that she will play up these issues in the months to come?
I think all three questions sort of bear on the same topic. Yeah. The Clinton campaign would not be focusing on this if they hadn't done extensive polling telling them that this is the way to go. That much of a populist she is. So they clearly think that this is a winning issue, especially in the nomination contest, because they're trying to win over Democratic voters, right? Not necessarily Republican voters right now. We know that female voters vote more for the Democratic Party than they do for the Republican Party, which is a huge problem for the Republican Party because the majority of the U.S. electorate is female. But we also know that it breaks down into smaller categories. If you are a married white woman or a, what's the other category? White middle-class woman, you're more likely to vote Republican. If you're single woman or woman of color, you're more likely to vote for the Democrats. So it also breaks, it's not as neat, right? There are also subcategories. But yes, Bernie Sanders also illustrates this. People, it seems, especially in the Democratic Party, are really interested right now in economic issues that overlap with gender issues, such as paid family leave, sick leave, all of these things that are sort of family issues and equal pay, right? And these kinds of things. So at least in the Democratic Party, there is definitely an interest in this. But I'm not sure how if she would reframe this in the general, I imagine that she would a little bit. So in terms of are there more gender cards coming, I think so, but I don't know how they're going to play them in the general election. Because then you have to appeal to a broader audience. Why is the glass ceiling thicker in the U.S.? This is where my research comes up short because I haven't done any research on this. But from what I've read, what the gender researchers in American political science, what they find is that when female candidates run, they are just as likely to win as a male candidate. The problem is not when you run. The problem is getting women to run. That's the hard part, the recruiting of female candidates, which goes to this question of where are they coming from, who's going to be the future candidates, who's being groomed, right? Are any women being groomed? Because one thing is once you run and you know you have the party behind you and you have the money and the fundraisers, it's getting the women to actually want to run for office. That's the difficult part, which I think possibly is not just a U.S. issue of this recruiting and getting women to think that they're going to run. And I did read an article for today by, I think, Jennifer Lawless, who does a lot of research on this in the U.S. at American University. And she was talking about the horrible message that the 2008 cycle sent to other potential female politicians, seeing how Hillary Clinton and Sarah Palin were treated in the media. She thought must have been a warning sign and something that would be likely to turn off potential female candidates. On that nice note.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hilde. I think this has been a really interesting hour and a half, and we look very much forward to following developments in the US, and I'm sure we will hear more from you as a commentator in Norwegian media in the time to come. So thank you so much, and thank you all for coming.